So good afternoon. Welcome to this press conference by the Commissioner General of UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini. We are here in Geneva at the Global Refugee Forum. As usual, we will hear some initial remarks by the Commissioner General, and then we will open the floor to questions. Commissioner General.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I arrived in Geneva on Tuesday evening, in fact for the conference, straight from Gaza. And Gaza was in fact my third visit since the war started. Today we are in the 69 days, almost 70 days of this war. And every time I go back, I always think it cannot get worse. But every time I see more misery, more grief, more sadness, and have the feeling that Gaza is not really a place habitable anymore. On this visit, I stayed in Rafah, in the extreme south of the Gaza Strip, which is nearby the Egyptian border. Now, Rafah is the epicenter of the displacement of the Gazan. There is over 1 million people who have fled in this governorate, and most of them, as we know, have been moved more than once since the beginning of the war. Rafah has quadrupled its number of people overnight, and especially when the offensive in the south has started. It traditionally has been a place where the poorest of the Gaza Strip used to live, and basically it's a place which lacks infrastructure and all the basic. I'm saying this because it's not a place to host into duration more than 1 million people, and certainly not the entire Gaza Strip. People are now pushed into this area, which does not represent, in terms of superficie, more than a quarter of the Gaza Strip. One UNRWA warehouse that became a shelter is now home to more than 30,000 people. This is a place I visited in our warehouses, and basically families live in tiny spaces separated only by blankets or plastic sheeting since the beginning of the war. But what has changed compared to my last visit is while before we used to have overcrowded shelter, more than 1 million people are living in UN premises. When I visited this warehouse, we had tens of thousands of people in the outside, which is in fact the extension of what happened, the overcrowding taking place in the warehouse. Basically, the lucky one are those who have a place inside our premises, and especially now that winter has just started. But the others have absolutely nowhere to go. They live in the open, they live in the cold, in the mud, and under the rain. Everywhere you look is congested with makeshift shelters. Everywhere you go, people are desperate, hungry, and are terrified. People, and this is also something completely new, people are stopping aid trucks, taking the food and eating it right away. And this is how desperate and hungry they are. And I witnessed this firsthand. So just to re-explain what I said here, because it's difficult to comprehend, because of the immensity of the needs, and because of the little aid trickling into Gaza, it is becoming more and more difficult to reach our shelter, which are overcrowded, because outside you have tens of thousands of people who are desperately in the same kind of needs, and they need also to be supplied and assisted in order to be able to reach the ones who are in the warehouses. And this has nothing to do with aid diversion. This is something which has to do with the total despair the people are expressing in the Gaza Strip. Hunger is something people in Gaza have never ever known before. But hunger has now emerged over the last few weeks, and we meet more and more people who haven't eaten for 1, 2, or 3 days. And this is the reason why we see people stopping sometimes trucks, downloading and eating on the spot. Now, let me just say also a few words regarding the security in Gaza. As of today, we have 135 UNRWA staff who have been killed since the beginning of the war. And you heard me many times, no place has been spared, not even the places which normally should be protected by the law of war. I was absolutely horrified yesterday when I saw a video circulating of an UNRWA school being blown up in northern Gaza. School, medical and UN facilities are not and should never ever be a target. Unfortunately, in Gaza, they have quite often become just that. We have, since the beginning of the war, recorded, when it comes to United Nations premises, about 150 situations where our premises have been hit or directly or indirectly, and this has led to the killing of more than 270 people and the injuries of more than 1,000. And some of the survivors in these places have just no choice but to stay in this shelter despite the fact that they have been hit. Why? Just because, again, there is absolutely nowhere to go in the Gaza Strip. And let me also remind that as far as the UN is concerned, we keep sharing the coordinate of all the locations with all the parties of the conflict, both the Israeli army, but also the de facto in Gaza. Now, let me also highlight that people there believe that their life are not equal to other life, and they have the feeling that in reality human rights or international humanitarian law does not really apply to them. There is a deep, deep sense and feeling of betrayal. There is a sense, a feeling that people have been abandoned by the international community. But in reality, like anyone else in Gaza, people just long for safety and stability. They just long for life. They just want to have a normal life, but they are very far away right now to this normal life. What continues to shock me is the ever-increasing level of dehumanization, the lack of empathy and humanity, the fact that people can laugh, cheer, and mock any type of wrongdoing that we observe in this war. When in fact, what is happening in Gaza should outrage anyone, should make us all rethink our values. I think this is also a make or break moment for all of us and for our shared humanity. Since we are here with you, colleagues, members of the media, let me thank you and your colleague in the region and beyond for covering what the people of Gaza are going through. But not only the people of Gaza, I mean anyone in the region, because it's really impacting anyone and beyond. As you all know, this war is also fought on TV screen and on social media. It's also a media war. I'm horrified at the smear campaign that target Palestinians and those who provide aid to them. And on that, I'm asking you to help us push back against misinformation and inaccuracies. I know that some of you are constantly doing fact-checking, but fact-checking is absolutely key if we want accurate information. Just always make sure to verify and debunk repeated and sometimes vulgar accusation. And as Commissioner General of UNRWA, I have experienced this more than once since our agency is also one of the targets of this war. Before I close, let me also share the latest on the situation in the West Bank, where we are also recording, and we should not forget, the highest level of violence in nearly 2 decades since the Second Intifada, with record high fatalities, injuries, arrests. Basically, there is no single day without an incursion, a security operation leading to the killing of Palestinians. Fear among the residents in the West Bank is also growing, and we start to observe some displacement of Palestinians. Significant and increasing settler violence, including the use of firearm, is also spreading. We all know that a lot of arms now have been distributed in the West Bank. But also, and here we have a perfect storm in the making, economically and financially. The economy is collapsing. Palestinians are not working in Israel anymore. Israeli Arabs are not doing shopping anymore in the West Bank. There is no real movement anymore from one city to the other one out of fear. And we also know that the Palestinian authorities have difficulties to pay salary. This is economically a perfect storm in the making in the West Bank. So maybe let me just end with the three asks I shared also yesterday when I addressed the plenary of the Global Refugee Forum. First, the humanitarian ceasefire. I welcome the decision or the support of 153 member states at the General Assembly. It is now time that this call for a humanitarian ceasefire be translated into reality. Number two, the siege of Gaza needs to be lifted, and what we need today is not just 100 trucks or 200 trucks. We need meaningful, at scale, uninterrupted, unconditional flow of basic commodities in the Gaza Strip. This is the only way to reverse the negative impact of the siege. We as humanitarians alone will not succeed to cover all the need of a desperate population if the crossings are not properly open, if the commercial sector is not properly coming back into Gaza. They have been denied any access now for 70 days. And last, I believe we have to make sure, and I know we say it since day one, and I know it is a call for all of us, but international humanitarian law should still have a meaning. It needs to have a meaning also in the context of Gaza. It cannot be just reinterpreted à la carte. This war has also rules, and it is time that these rules be properly applied. Just to conclude, I think there is no suffering. In suffering, there is absolutely no competition, and I believe that ultimately in this war, there will be no winner. The longer this war goes on, the larger the loss, but beyond that, the deeper the grief. So I think, like many of my colleagues, that there is absolutely no alternative to a proper, genuine political process to end once for all the longest lasting unresolved conflict. 75 years without a solution. It has not been a priority over the last decade. It is time that this becomes a proper priority. To end, Israeli and Palestinian deserve statehood, peace and stability. Peace and stability, that's what the region deserves also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philippe. Yes, I see many, many hands. As you know, we are webcasted, but it's an in-person, so I'll give the priority to the journalists in the room. You are many numerous. Give me a second. I'll start with ATS, with Laurent Sierra.
Thank you, General Commissioner. First, as you've been vocal after the vote at the National Council on Monday, this morning there was a more positive vote for you at the Conseil des États. So what's your comment? And maybe, because it's not the end of the trip, could you say what the 20 million francs could change now in Gaza, for instance, so that the Swiss parliamentarian can realize what's at stake? And then briefly, it seems that the Israeli army announced a 4-hour humanitarian pause in Al-Salam neighborhood in Rafah today. Could you verify that? And what a 4-hour humanitarian pause change in the current situation? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Sorry? Okay. Coming. Yes, I heard about the decision of the upper house this morning. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a positive development. It's important that Switzerland continue to tell to the Palestinian and to the region that it remains committed to its humanitarian tradition. As you heard me before, we are confronted with an unprecedented war. I think it's a war of all the possible superlative in terms of destruction, in terms of number of people killed, in terms of need, in terms of displacement. And more than ever, countries with an humanitarian tradition should continue to express their solidarity. And today, the main agency in the Gaza Strip is UNRWA, and would UNRWA collapse, the entire humanitarian system in the Gaza Strip would collapse. So these 20 million are absolutely essential for UNRWA to continue to deliver its life-saving and humanitarian assistance in the Gaza Strip. But beyond that, there is also the message coming from a member state, coming from the country depository of the Geneva Convention, to tell the Palestinian that international humanitarian law does apply to everyone, including to the Palestinian. And this message of reassurance is absolutely key, because today in the region there is still a feeling that this might be implemented à deux vitesses, as I would say in French. And on the second question, sorry, I cannot confirm or infirm because I haven't been informed about this. Usually, few-hour pause allow people just to move from one place to the other one. In the past, pauses allowed people to replenish, but today in Gaza there is absolutely no market, so there is nothing to replenish. So most of the time the pause is just a respite from the bombardment, plus gives sometimes the possibility to people to move from one place to another one.
Okay, I've seen Yuri après Lev, Rianovosti. those who have raised their hands, if you can keep it up a little bit. So I'm taking notes of the various requests. Thank you. I think I've got them all. C'est comme vous voulez, non?
Comme vous voulez.
Ouais.
Merci du coup pour l'opportunité de ce briefing. Vous avez dit dans vos remarques d'ouverture que l'UNRWA faisait aussi partie des cibles de cette guerre. Qu'est-ce que vous voulez dire exactement? Et le 4 décembre, votre organisation avait indiqué qu'au moins 5 écoles avaient été utilisées à des fins militaires par différentes parties au conflit dans l'enclave de Gaza. Est-ce que vous avez plus d'informations à ce sujet et est-ce que ces cas se sont répétés depuis? Merci.
Merci. Premièrement, in English or in French?
C'est comme vous voulez. Vous pouvez répondre en français, si vous voulez.
Okay.
C'est vraiment comme vous voulez.
Okay.
Voilà. Non,
C'est bon, c'est bon.
C'est comme vous voulez.
Vous parlez un francophone, donc je suis convaincu. Moi pas, mais vous. Ah, vous, d'accord. Ok, très bien. Bref, je reviens sur la question. Donc, votre question, c'était sur les cibles. Effectivement, aujourd'hui, j'ai mentionné cette guerre médiatique où, effectivement, les Palestiniens ont été la cible d'un certain nombre de campagnes de dénigrement qui, à mon avis, ont aussi contribué à déhumaniser le conflit et à permettre de rendre l'intolérable tolérable. Et effectivement, dans ce contexte-là, l'UNRWA, qui est une agence qui apporte assistance et protection aux réfugiés palestiniens, mais dans le contexte de Gaza, aujourd'hui, aux Palestiniens victimes de la guerre, on a aussi été la cible de campagnes de dénigrement, de campagnes où les informations sont complètement déformées, dans le but d'affaiblir la légitimité d'une organisation comme la nôtre. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle je pense qu'il est effectivement important pour nous tous que toute information qui circule, principalement dans les médias sociaux, soit vérifiée par les médias. Je sais qu'il y a beaucoup de moyens pour le faire, mais ça signifie aussi que l'information ne circule pas forcément de manière instantanée, parce qu'il faut aussi un temps pour pouvoir la vérifier. Maintenant, la question de l'utilisation des écoles, on a entendu un certain nombre d'allégations comme quoi des combattants se seraient rendus dans les écoles, notamment dans la partie nord. Comme vous le savez, nous avons quitté la partie nord. Le 80% de la population, en fait, a quitté la partie nord. Il nous est extrêmement difficile de vérifier les informations, mais effectivement, à chaque fois que l'on entend parler de ces allégations, ce sont à chaque fois des violations, en fait, du droit humanitaire international, que ça soit utilisé par des combattants du Hamas ou que ça soit utilisé par l'armée israélienne. Ces bâtiments des Nations Unies ou les infrastructures publiques doivent être épargnés. Je pense que sur la base de tout ce que l'on entend et de toutes les allégations, il devrait y avoir effectivement plus tard des enquêtes indépendantes pour déterminer ce qui s'est réellement passé et les responsabilités respectives. Aujourd'hui, en pleine guerre, sans avoir accès, il nous est difficile de vérifier toutes ces informations.
Thank you very much. Reuters, Emma?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I wanted to know about the scope of your reach inside Gaza. With so many people in Rafah, are you able to reach the people at all outside of Rafah now? And what are your concerns for the conditions that they are living in? How long has it been since they'd had any help? And can you just clarify on the food aid trucks? I know stealing is a strong and judgmental word, but are people essentially grabbing it off trucks, or is it being distributed? If you could just clarify what was happening there. Thank you.
Right now, we have easier access for the people in Rafah. We have access to the Khan Yunis governorate and also the middle region. We have almost no access to the north. I think we had access to the north during the pause, but after the pause it has become extremely difficult. Now, what I tried to describe before is how the operating environment is becoming more and more impossible. And you heard about the letter I sent last week to the President of the General Assembly. And basically it was also a call saying that we are teetering on the edge of a possible implosion. We might reach our limit. Why? Because there is more and more a breakdown of a civil order, and as long the humanitarian assistance remain a crumble compared to the immensity of the needs, the more this tension will continue, the more the environment is becoming impossible. So the example I gave to you was indeed the example of that I witnessed. In fact, I saw it under my eyes and my watch that people in Rafah have started to decide to help themselves directly from the truck out of total despair and started to, eat what they have taken out of the truck on the spot. So indeed, I cannot speak about stealing or diversion. I am trying to put my feet in the shoes of the people, and most likely we might try out of despair to do the same. Now, with this growing despair, our operating environment becomes more and more difficult. And this, the only way at this stage, in the absence of a ceasefire, to address it and to reverse this tension is to bring assistance at scale. We need to bring it at scale. It needs to be meaningful. People need to know that it is coming in. And I also believe that for that, Rafah is not enough. That's the reason why we are calling for the opening of Kerem Shalom. Kerem Shalom is a crossing which used to handle hundreds of trucks every day. It is geared to bring in commodities. If we would have a market, people would have alternative. But today they don't have alternative because there is no market anymore. Even if you have money today in Gaza, you cannot do a lot with your money.
Emma, sorry, we really are short on time. In fact, I would like to ask, I think we have time just maybe for two more questions. Please, brief. Agnès Pedrero, AFP.
It's for me, the brief. Or it's for
Maybe. Agnès is there.
Yes, thank you. I will ask the question in English. Yesterday, still on the same issue, the COGAT published a video on X social media saying that it was the Hamas who is taking the food on the trucks and with violence. So I understand that you have seen some scenes by yourself, but do you have other informations concerning possible actions by the Hamas on those trucks? And you mentioned displacement in West Bank. Could you let us know where these people is going or are going?
Yes. On the first one, I can tell you that what I saw, there were no weapons. It was generally people from the community who, out of despair, stopped this truck and started to grab whatever they could grab. Usually when you talk about diversion, it's at scale, it's under the constraint, and it's usually to bring after that, the goods in a different location. That has absolutely not been the case. I haven't heard any of our trucks, the UN one, the UNRWA one, who have been diverted the way you are describing right now. When it comes to the displacement, in the West Bank. What we keep hearing, it's like in Jenin, if you have a big operation going on in the refugee camp, people are getting out of the camp, go in the broader governorate, usually move to broader family, extended family, but do not stay anymore in the area of the incursion. And we keep hearing now that displacements start to take place, but it's always limited, in fact, in the same governorate for the time being. It's not a broader displacement than that.
Thank you very much. The last question, John Zarocostas, France 24 and The Lancet. It's right there, John.
Oh, yes. Yes. Mr. Lazzarini, the UN have told us that the flash appeal has only been 39% funded for the 1.2 billion. In your 2 days here, meeting with delegations, have you got any concrete pledges besides the Swiss of increasing funds that can be used immediately by your agency and other UN partners, especially the shelter crisis and the food crisis that you just described? Thank you.
When you say beside the Swiss, you mean the Swiss have increased their contribution? That's yes. I did not hear about additional commitment right now, but many delegations have informed us that they are working on seeking. They are working on at increasing their contribution. We have seen since the beginning of the war, at least when it comes to UNRWA, that our flash appeal has been slightly. It's maybe covered at 50% ours, but it brings the overall at 37%. Of course, it's not at scale. Of course, for a crisis of this scope, one would have expected a much higher funding level. Now, as we know also, is we not only need funding today, but once we will be talking about a day after, the funding required will be much, much, much higher. Otherwise, there will be absolutely no future for the people in Gaza.
Thank you very much. I am afraid we have to stop here. Thanks for coming, and thanks to the Commissioner General for this press conference. Come back anytime, and have a nice afternoon. Thank you.